Coming up, we are diving into the inbox.
You're listening to Double Tap, your daily accessible technology show. Now, here's your hosts, Stephen Scott and Shaun Preece.
Oh, Shaun Preece, me old mucker, me old horse thief, how are you?
Please don't say that. I'm not sure if I like it. I am very well, Stephen. How are you?
I should maybe add for some context that you're not a horse thief. But in fact, this is a line that just came up in The West Wing when I was watching it one day.
No, not The West Wing.
Martin
You get
Sheen
so
used it.
obsessed
Oh, I love it.
with
I love it.
TV shows. It's either The West Wing or what you binging on at the minute. Is it 30 Rock
30
or something?
Rock, with Tina Fey, of course, wrote that and created it. Such an amazing and funny show. It's ridiculous.
Funny.
But sometimes in life, you need ridiculous. I think at the moment, especially in life, we need ridiculous. So
Yes.
I want 30 Rock on repeat, quite frankly. No, I love it. It's really funny. And it's available with TTS in my location. TTS audio description, text to speech. Can you believe that? Not real audio description. Well,
yeah.
it is real.
Yeah,
but you
but
know what I mean.
can you watch it without, though? If you didn't
No.
have any AD
Well.
at all, would you get lost?
So I watched this. This always seems to be around pandemics and epidemics. There was a swine flu epidemic at one time. I want to say 2011 or 2010 or something. I think it was around that time.
Yeah.
And that is when I first watched 30 Rock. And then I think I saved the next one for, I don't know, the cholera or the plague or whatever it was. And then, obviously the COVID-19. And, what I'll do is once I've finished this, I'll wait for the next huge pandemic to come along. And if I survive that one, I'll watch the rest of 30 Rock then as well.
Survive it. Wow, what a start, Stephen Scott. You're a disaster binge TV watcher. I mean, that's awful.
You got to have something to keep the spirits up, that's what it's about.
Talking of which, I'm going to look at the inbox today, and you know what? I'm going to make a guarantee to our listeners. Hello, Double Tappers.
Hello.
To our listeners that we're not going to have a 10-minute ramble in between emails, voicemails, WhatsApp today. We're going to just go straight through and get as many done as we can because our inbox is exploding, Stephen Scott. Have you seen it recently?
I know. Well, don't even go there, Preece. Don't even go there. Let me tell you what's going on here at Double Tappers. This is what's going on.
Don't open the curtain.
No,
Stop it.
I am pulling that curtain right open. I've got a
I'm gonna complain to
switchboard
HR.
remote and I'm pressing the button and it's pulling my curtain. You see, those are really cool. Open the curtains for you. Behind the curtain is Shaun Preece, who's just been introduced to the inbox. Now, look, don't panic, folks. No, it's all going to be fine. I know what you're thinking. Shaun and emails, they don't generally go together very well.
No.
But no, he has promised, because very kindly you've taken on the inbox.
Yes.
Laura, of course, deals with reading the emails, but we do have to organize them all and make sure that we can, lay them out so we can play them out for you. And of course, all the WhatsApp messages we're getting, everything else. So, with all of that going on, you've taken on the challenge of managing it all. And I think
That's
now
right.
you've realised what I've been doing for the past 10 years.
I've got to say, well done. It is unbelievable. And
Nothing is a problem in life until it happens to you.
I was going through last night the mountain that we've got there, and it's like, wow, we really need to get through them. But I mean, the trouble is that they're usually so good that it sparks a conversation between us. So sometimes we go through a show and only do 2 or 3.
I know.
That's your fault.
Well, it is my fault because I never stop ranting. But I will say this, you guys come up with such great topics. You could literally do a show per email. You could, because every single email that comes in has got such a great story to it or a great conversation starter. And because, on this program, and I think let's be honest about it, there's not many shows out there like this. Where else do you go to give your opinion and get your chance to get it on the air? Podcasts out there nowadays are often very much just people like you and I just talking away, but that's it. What we want to do is invite you into this conversation. That's what the whole thing about this is. So, I can't claim to this line, but I liked it, which was I was in podcasting when it was called radio. And,
good.
I like that. That was a Marco Flalo line, by the way, and I steal that with pride because it's a great line. But it's true, that's what I got into. My first gig in radio was talk radio. And that may not surprise anybody. I think I came out of the womb with a microphone in my hand. So,
I think it's the voice. What else were you going to be?
Is that and the inability to stop talking, which seemed to go pretty well. I blame my mother and also thank her. Okay, so yeah, you're right. We're going to get into the email. So shall we just get on with it? Let's get on with it.
Let's do
For
it.
sake. Let's get on with it.
Email. We get email. We get your email every day.
Oh, dear.
Here's your mail today.
Thank you.
I love that you start the show off with it. There's a guarantee we're not going to rant today. 5 minutes in, we're still going.
I know, yeah.
And we haven't played one email yet.
Well, that's it. Let's just go straight to it, Stephen Scott. We're not even going to do this ramble. Let's do it.
Wait, we're not going to even do this. Ramble is not happening.
No.
So we're going to kick off with Mark in Montreal, who's got some comments on the Oko app. Now, we did tell you recently that the app is going to a subscription model. Let's hear what you've got to say, Mark. Up first.
Hi, Stephen and Shaun. It's Mark in Montreal. I hope all is well, and I hope things are good. Your listeners, too.
Thank you.
I was surprised by this, given the fact that when Oko Pilot launched in Canada, I believe it was last July 1st, and after the beta testing, which I did and a number of people did in Quebec and elsewhere in Canada for 2 weeks, and then they launched it on July 1st as a present for Canada Day. And then 2 months or a month and a half later, they canceled it in Quebec because there were issues here with our signage. I don't know if it's because of the bilingualism of the signage or what the exact issue was, but because of contentious issues, Oko Pilot was canceled in Quebec as of, I think, the end of August, the beginning of September last year. So we haven't had it. And now this little surprise. So for me, I wouldn't even attempt to sign up for it for something that's not going to work in your province. It would be nice to have that notification right up front that it's not working in Quebec, or if that has changed. Hey, sign up for our subscription based app. These are the prices. It's now working in Quebec. You know, if that were the case, I don't think $39.99 is bad for what you get if it works. The fact that it doesn't in Quebec stops me from going any further with it. But if it was available, I'd seriously think about it for $40 a year. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, look, first off, I totally understand where you're coming from, Mark, right? I mean, nobody's going to pay for something if it's not available in your area, but the point here is that you were told that it's available in Canada, so I would have assumed it was available in Quebec, because the last time I checked, and I don't know my local politics, I admit that, but I do believe Quebec is part of Canada so
You
far
think
anyway.
It's been ostracized.
Yeah, it's not the Texas of America, is it? It's not trying to succeed the nation or whatever it is.
I did not know it wasn't available in Quebec, so thank you for that information for a start, because I've been telling people, yeah, it's available in Canada, but if it's not everywhere, then it isn't. Yeah, and of course, you're not going to pay for a service you can't use. And I will say this as well. I downloaded the app when the news of the subscription model came in. I downloaded the app from the UK App Store. I was able to, even though it's not available. The service is not available here in the UK. And as soon as I opened it up, it said, okay, which subscription model did you want?
That's interesting.
Now, I would have thought that the first thing it would do was check if it's available in our country. I'm sure that if I went through with it, it would have said, sorry, it wouldn't have charged me for a service it couldn't
Well,
provide.
you'd hope.
I would hope so. But I think the first thing it should do is check the other location and say, sorry, we're not available yet. A lot of the other apps will do that. So, yeah, absolutely. But it's interesting. Look, the main point was he actually didn't have a problem with the subscription model itself or the price.
That's right, yeah. He's happy to pay it, but it needs to be available. Now, there is an argument that says that with the funding, they can then start to build this out and perhaps resolve these issues that they've been having, particularly in Quebec. So that's one of the arguments you could make. They're not making this argument. I'm making the argument on their behalf. But I think ultimately there clearly is a need for investment, and they're realizing that. And we've said this before, and I stand on the idea that absolutely, if you want these things to continue, we may have to pay for them. It's not ideal. It really is not ideal. But clearly there isn't enough money coming in from business and government. So we've got to stump up the cash, and is $40 okay? Well, that's up to the individual, I guess. That's
the year.
Yeah, but again, it's very individual, right? People could say that's way too much. I understand that. I totally get
That's
that.
how much you use the service and what value you assign to it. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if you're in a busy city, like Toronto, for example, you could possibly, I remember when I was in Toronto, everyone was always helping me to get across the road. I think they were, because I was very cautious of that, because that's a city I don't know particularly well. Traffic's coming from the wrong direction.
Yes.
And I was completely confused. I mean, the first day, I remember in 2019, I went to Toronto, and that was nearly my last day on earth, because I had just stepped out of the hotel, and I was told if I crossed the road, I could get a bus to where I was going, which was actually to the AMI offices. And when I was trying to get across the road, I'd forgotten that the traffic came the other way. And just as I stepped out, I looked to my right. I don't know why, but I did. I looked to my right, and it was clear, obviously. Could hear nothing. I could hear something coming the other way, but I didn't pay any attention to it because I don't. And then just as I went to step out, vroom, this bus just nearly took me out completely. Honked its horn at me, and that was nearly the end of that. So yeah, it was nearly end of Stephen Scott, and that was that. Horrible.
A terrifying story to pass on to everyone. Thank you, Stephen Scott. Yes,
Always
I remember trying to cross
both ways, blind people.
Crossing the road in Regina. That crossing thing was it was like
that wasn't a road. That was about 800 roads merged into one.
It was incredible. The blind man trying to cross the road to get to the chicken. There's a joke in there somewhere. I was trying to get to KFC. Anyway,
so you
enough rambling.
That's good.
Thank you.
I liked Regina. I did like Regina. Okay, so let's move on, because thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. But Dennis Long has a view on this.
Yes, hi. This is Dennis Long. I'm calling about the Oko app, the one that does the street crossings. They are like a lot of blindness developers, and they're getting greedy. And ultimately, the market or lack thereof will determine if this app is successful. I will not pay for it. You don't know if it works. I've heard it doesn't work with some traffic lights. It works with others. And I'm not going to pay for something that may or may not work. If you expect me to pay for something, then I expect it to work 100% of the time. Because at that point, you're changing the game. So you want to charge me for it? It better not fail. Period. The end. I mean, that's just the way it is. You're charging for a service. People have a right and an expectation to expect that service to work without fail, and every time they need it. It's no different than if you subscribe to an Apple service. You expect when you go to use that service, it works. If you subscribe to a weather app, you expect, as part of your subscription, to be able to set alerts and expect them to work.
Yeah, I hear you, Dennis. I do. I think,
Do you? I think that's a little bit harsh.
Well, no,
Dennis,
okay.
to be
So look,
honest.
I do expect it to work. If I'm paying for something, of course I expect it to work. But I don't know if I would go so far as to say that when I start paying for something, if it goes down, then, it's an absolute disgrace. I demand my money back immediately. If that was the case, then we'd be forever demanding money back from our internet providers, from our, Apple servers, from our Google servers when they go down, which they do. You maybe can't access a bank through the night because they're doing updates, so you can't access the bank through the banking app. I'm not going to say, well, that's it, I'm changing bank as a result. I think, we often put a lot of... I think this is the problem when you go in as a business, when you give something for free and then you charge. I think you actually place a higher value on it. A much higher value, because people are aware of that cost. Not to say they're not aware of it at first, but there's a difference. There's a difference when you pay up front at first, when you know it's part of the cost. It's got that intrinsic value. Suddenly, it's got a higher value. That's my take on it. And as for the cost, as for them being greedy, I don't know if I buy that, if I'm honest. I mean, I can't speak for Oko. I don't know what's going on, but I don't think they're being greedy here. I think they're trying to save the app. That would be my take.
That is exactly the point I was referring to when I said I thought it was a little harsh. I absolutely agree with Dennis. If something doesn't work for you, why should you pay for it? It's kind of the same with Mark in Montreal. We just heard his service isn't available. Of course you're not going to pay for it. As to how well it works, I mean, I've heard good things. I don't think I've heard any negatives other than, it's not available in my country. I can't try it out, so I can't say how well it works. But, the point is, you should be able to try this app out free, I would say. A free trial is always good to get people in anyway, to see how useful it is. But even if you just pay for the month and you see how it behaves, then the point is the subscription worth it? And I don't think developers are being greedy by asking for money to keep. It takes a lot of work, all this stuff. This isn't something, people are just knocking out in 5 minutes. Or doing the AI in different countries, knowing what different crossings are like, and getting the data for the AI model to recognize when it is safe to walk, incredibly difficult. And plus the updates, like the turn-by-turn navigation that they've introduced. That all needs paying for. So I just smart a little bit when I hear developers are just being greedy. No, I think everyone deserves, a wage, basically. Why would they work for free?
Well, okay, here's the other side of that coin, Dennis, right? What if they turned around and said, okay, well, as a result of the fact that it's free, we're just going to scrap the app. We're just going to get rid of it because we just can't afford to keep it going. And we don't want to charge people because that's unfair. So we'll just scrap the app. Would that be better? Would that honestly be the better result? Because it appears to me that's the solution. I remember we had the guy who created the app on the show here, and he said, we played the clip, remember? We played the clip saying, look, you should not be charged to cross the road. That was his point. Mm-hmm. And, now we're in a position where he has to charge. Now, we haven't had him back on the show. We welcome him back on, but I imagine he will be pretty upset that he has to charge. So... And again, it's a choice, and this is an opportunity, I guess, for other companies to do this. Look, the problem here is, I think when Microsoft came out with Soundscape, there was a sense that, this is great, we can get this and it's funded forever and it'll be okay because Microsoft are behind it, it'll never go anywhere. And then look what happened, right? It just gets shut down and sent out to open source. And now it struggles itself, right? And it's going to struggle on its own. Is the solution?
When was the last update to Soundscape?
Well, that's right. And I don't hear anyone talking about Soundscape as much these days. And that's not because no one's using it. I just think it's because, no one's talking about it.
Because why? Well, because it takes work to keep developing the code for it and maintaining the code for it. And the Scottish Tech Army, who else did this?
It was it was the Vision, now known as Vision Ireland, and
Vision Ireland. Yeah, I was trying to remember the new name. Vision Ireland and the Scottish Tech Army both took it on the open source and made it available. Amazing work, by the way. But how do you maintain that code? As I say, this isn't easy. This isn't something anyone can do. Pick up the code, maintain it, keep it up to date, introduce new features.
Well, hang on. That's a separate thing, right? And it's important.
Why?
No, but it's an important point you make, right? Because you're saying maintain, which is really what the Scottish Tech Army was trying to do, maintain the code. But if you want new features, you want new things, that costs more money. It takes a different level of business because, look, ultimately what the Scottish Tech Army was doing was bringing together a number of organizations to say, look, across the world, you chip in $100, $200, and, we'll keep this thing going. If enough organizations pay in, and that was kind of how the Orbit Research partnership got going, right? Because it was organizations around the world, CNIB, and many other organizations, non-profits around the world, paid in. They paid in their money to try and allow for this product to exist, and in the Braille case, to try and keep the costs down, to bring those costs down, which it achieved. But they're trying to do the same thing with apps here. And it's a good idea. It is a good idea, but that is fine on a maintenance level. But if you're trying to get new features, that's different. So I think this is the challenge, and I don't think we fully appreciate, and we will hear a conversation soon with another developer who is really struggling at the moment, really struggling to build the tools that we might use, but is struggling to find the funding. So, look, personally, having spoken to these developers, I can't call them greedy. I just would never call them greedy. I'd say it's the opposite. I think they're trying their damnedest to not charge. But there's a reality cost here. Even for the app to just exist costs money. I have a website, not the Double Tap website. I have a different website, which I maintain. I don't do much with, and it costs me over $200 a year.
Yeah,
just for it to exist.
Mm-hmm.
So suddenly I had worked on it. It was actually a project I worked on for an organization, and I thought to myself, okay, I'll just do this, and that's fine. I don't mind, whatever. It doesn't cost anything, really, does it?
Yeah.
And then suddenly you're adding it up, and you're going, goodness me, this is costing money.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And that's just one website, which is, fairly low traffic website. You think of an app that's been downloaded, needs maintenance, needs all that work done in the background. So, yeah, I think we're all very quick to jump on them and say, oh, disgrace, charging money. I do think, though, I'll go back to my point, I think it's about the value of the dollar in this case. And the value is kind of achieved by the fact that it's free first and then suddenly there's a charge. I think that somehow makes the value higher to the consumer.
Well, I haven't seen a huge backlash like we saw, and look, I know it's apples to oranges, but with the voice string reader.
Yes.
The whole community seemed to be shouting about it. And look, again, that's because they promised one thing and then went back on it. That didn't happen with Oko.
Yeah.
But still, the subscription cost itself and the actual implementation of a subscription model people seem to accept that. So I think a lot of us do think that already.
Interesting topic. Get in touch. Tell us your thoughts. We'll give you the contact details soon. Let's hear from Camille on a different topic.
The Taskbar is a very useful way to launch your favourite applications in Windows. First, pin your application to the taskbar. Then you need to figure out where the application you want to launch is located on the taskbar. In my case, Notepad is the first application on the taskbar. Therefore, to launch Notepad, all I need is use the Windows Start key in conjunction with the number 1 keyboard key. As simple as that. Happy tapping, Camille.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Thank you, Camille. I didn't really know much about the taskbar. I always tended to avoid it, to be perfectly honest.
Avoid the taskbar? How dare you, sir? No, that's a really good tip. I will say, though, I have heard this tip before. And by the way, if you, for example, if to pin something to the taskbar, if you're in your start menu and you search for, I don't know, whatever it may be My Eyes for Windows, for example, you search for that and then you find it in your start menu, you hit the application key, or is it Shift F10? And it'll bring up the context menu, and in there will be pinned to taskbar, and it will pin it down there. And you can quickly, as Camille said, open up the apps using that keyboard shortcut. I still just find it easy to hit the Windows key and start typing a couple of letters and hitting enter. I still haven't got into the muscle memory of doing it that way, the taskbar.
That's exactly the same as me, yeah. I don't bother with it.
The start menu just seems so easy, right?
It just feels like an extra step, doesn't it? It just feels like an extra step. But in saying that, with the keyboard shortcut, that does make it easier. One thing I was playing with on Windows 11, which I found really annoying, was in the system tray. They still call it a system tray? I think they do.
Yeah. Well, it depends what we're going to talk about. But the thing with the clock and the active icons, yeah.
Yeah, that's the key phrase, active icons. So I didn't realize that in certain occasions you have to enable apps to even show up in there. So there was when I got that Evo 16, I don't know if I mentioned this on the show, when I got the Evo 16 audio interface for the PC, I was trying to find, it says that basically the app only shows up in the system tray. So that's how you activate it. And I could not, I wasn't in there. And I had even changed my settings so that it wouldn't, that horrible thing where it does, I can't remember the name of it, but basically you've got to hit spacebar on this extra menu in order to see the other things that are in your system tray. It kind of groups them all.
Inactive apps or hidden apps.
Hidden, yeah. But on the system tray itself, right? You when you're sort of going through the list, you go through Wi-Fi, you go through whatever, and then it says, there's like an extra option to go in and then see all the other ones like in my case, Dropbox or Jaws or whatever.
That's right.
And it'd be in there. So I expanded all that, so that was all gone, and it was all. So I know that I'm aware of everything that's in that list, and the Evo app was not in it. So only because I had been playing in the settings, I thought I'm going to go and check this, and yeah, sure enough, in the settings it was hidden. You had to enable it to actually show up in the system tray. That's new to me. I thought if it was an active app and it was available, it would just show up in there. But no, you can actually choose to show it or hide it. which is good in a way. You can tidy it. I think that's the
You can
point,
totally
right? You can tidy it
customize the
up.
taskbar.
Yeah.
If you hit Windows I to go to settings and then Control E to go to search, you should start there anyway. Focus should automatically start in search. Type taskbar, and you can change all of those settings. Yeah, you're right. But I thought they were all enabled by default.
No. Well,
So,
maybe
I'm quite shocked by that.
I don't know. I had to go and enable it. It wasn't there. And once I did, I was, finally, there it is. That all made sense.
I still find it a little bit confusing, that Windows settings. You go through and it says more settings collapsed.
Yeah,
Okay, hit space on it too. Then do I need to arrow down or tab? Arrow down. Nope, that didn't do anything. Tab. Yeah, that's it. And it's still a bit long-winded.
I find NVDA or narrator the best ways to do it. I mean, narrator is actually the best because it's
Narrator
built to work
gets
with it, right?
everything.
Yeah, and it reads every bit of text, every single thing. The NVDA scan mode is good. I haven't got used to, and I'm going to get emails, but and please do tell me, but I can never understand when I'm in a system menu or a system settings dialog, for example, how to get it to read everything, right? It can take me to the button. So say there's a line of text and then a button that says details or, more or whatever. It'll immediately land me on the button, but I can't get to the text before it. And I know there's JAWS cursors and all of that, but all they seem
it's
to
the
do is...
numpad, isn't it?
Yeah, but they seem to move the cursor around, or the actual physical mouse, not what's actually the text on the screen the way I'm looking for, in the same way that the NVDA scan mode does, or narrator does, which is perfect. You arrow up and down, and it just literally moves between all the elements, and it's perfect, right? It reads the text, and then it reads the button, and you know where you are. I just haven't figured this out with JAWS yet, and it's the one thing that really... It's the one irritant I've got with JAWS. I'm sure there's a way to solve it. If only we knew someone who,
the JAWS cursor, or the what's the companion? We should ask that. I've forgotten the address of it, but our listeners will
fscompanion.ai.
FS, that's
a good point, because that is very good. That's a very cool thing. Although I did have an issue with one particular setting. It evades me now, but I had a setting I was trying to change, and it just could not get it right for me. Could not give me the right answer. I was trying it, and it was just, it was coming up with answers, and I'm like, I knew in my head that's not right, and it just wouldn't
AI knows
figure it out.
best, Stephen Scott. Don't question AI. They'll soon be our overlords. Yes, okay. As ever, it's a combination of JAWS, NVDA, and narrator that will get you through.
You got to know everything. You got to have everything.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to... Thank you, Camille. Appreciate that. Christy got in touch. This is telling you how far back we're going. We're going into the deepest, darkest parts of winter and talk about snow, because someone has suggested using snow spikes. I think Christy has some views on this.
Just a quick warning, as you guys were talking about the clamp-on or elastic attachments for boots and shoes that give a person spikes on the bottom of their footwear. While they are great on ice and through packed snow, please be very careful. Here in BC, Canada, we get a lot of ice and snow, so I've tried nearly everything. One of you mentioned the hazard of stepping on the dog, which is indeed a bit terrifying, not to mention your own foot whilst taking boots on and off. Yes, I did that. Or another person's foot. I especially loved the spikes when I lived in a house with really steep driveway. Prior to getting them, one day I slid all the way to the bottom of the drive while remaining on my feet. What a trick. But what nearly killed me was getting super comfortable wearing them, thinking how great they were until I stepped inside a building that had a nice, smooth flooring. My feet flew out from under me as if I were on a skating rink, and I fell flat on my back in the entrance to the mall. Those spikes are very slippery with a smooth surface, so be sure to pull them off at the entrance of any buildings or when walking where there isn't any snow and ice for them to grab or penetrate. From then on, in the depth of winter, I have a small bag that hangs from my backpack to put the spiky shoe bottoms inside whenever I go inside a building. That's all today. Thanks for all you do and stay safe. Christy, Kamloops in BC, Canada.
Oh, thank you, Christy. I love when you say I know you're in Kamloops, and that's why you tell me you're in Kamloops. But I love that you tell me you're there, because I had literally driven past it. Not me, the coach driver. Drove past it when we were on holiday. I think we stayed in Kamloops, actually. I think we stayed there.
Stop it now. It's like, it's the equivalent
I want to go back.
Showing you their holiday slides.
Oh, I want to go back to Canada. I want to go back and traverse. I want to go stay in Banff. I liked Banff.
Oh,
see, we have a Banff in Scotland, you see, in it. So I have to say, there's a bit of a difference. I think I prefer the one in Canada. Just saying.
Let's not go into that. Yeah, thanks for that. yes, I was talking about, I've got a bit of a phobia about slipping over now in the ice. And recently, obviously, when we were talking about it, it was a bit of a cold snap and there was ice everywhere. And I was kind of scared to go out. I had some grips before and they were the spiked kind, but I was worried about stepping on the dog's paw at some point, so I wouldn't wear them. But I did find another pair of grips, as I call them, that weren't spikes, and they were amazing. So if you imagine a metal figure of 8 on each foot, but instead of spikes, it was they had little circles going around them. So you could argue that it was almost like spikes, but round. But they felt far less, if you did stand on your dog's foot, it wouldn't sort of penetrate the skin. And they actually worked really well. You can also get grips with rubber spikes. Now, obviously, I don't think they work quite as well as the metal ones, but it depends on the thickness of the ice. But yeah, thank you very much for that. But I did find some grips that weren't spikes and worked well. In fact, I've only just recently took them off. I've been walking around even though the ice had gone for ages. I just felt so safe with them on. So yes, thank you.
Well, yes, indeed. Thank you, Christy. Appreciate the messages. As always. Listen, while we're here, we'll just remind you of how you can get involved in the show if you want to. Here is how to contact us.
Get in touch with Double Tap. Email feedback at doubletaponair.com. Leave us a voicemail at 1-877-803-4567. And now you can send an audio or video message to us on WhatsApp. That number is 1-613-481-0144.
Okay, let's hear from Mark.
Hi, Stephen and Shaun. First, not sure when you will get to this, but happy Christmas from Mike and Mrs. Mike in the Man Cave. All the best to the two of you and your family for the new year. Now on to our comments. As for some of the criticism regarding your show content, I don't think you would get the large audience if this was a pure tech show. People would tune in if the specific topic interested them. I personally go to YouTube to search for a specific piece on a specific item. I would not tune in daily as I do with your show. Personally, I like your product reviews, and your other higher level tech discussions give people something to think about. Then they can go away to continue their own research. The absolute favourite aspect of your show is that both of you discuss the issues you are experiencing with apps today. A good example was trying to find a good app to detect colours. For the longest time, I thought it was how I was using the phone or lighting or whatever. I think we are about the same age, or Shaun and I are, so I appreciate knowing that frustration levels rise for you and other double tappers. You cannot put a price on open and honest discussion. Since I am relatively new to Double Tap, who in the world is Mr. F that the two of you apologise to quite often? As for the position of glide, I believe it is all a matter of preference, and as Stephen said, where your body allows you to position it. I found that I held it in my right hand versus my left hand that I used to hold my guide dog harness, only because with glide I was pushing and it felt better in my dominant hand. I found the positioning was off to the right of my body, with the base being approximately in the same position as my guide's head would be. The point here is that they are building glide to be able to be used in a variety of positions. The Envision glasses. First declaring that I am still on the public beta version of the AI feature. However, I have not been able to get the AI person to continue to tell me what is on the TV screen without some interaction from me with the glasses. Microsoft Outlook. Using JAWS, it's really not that bad once you get used to using the basic daily functions. Then things become easier after that. However, I will admit that the calendar is a nightmare. For me, it is easier to keep it in a daily view and progress from there using arrow keys or the tab key, as Stephen pointed out. What is quite difficult and way too much effort with the screen reader is to try to book a meeting with other attendees and having to determine their availability. It's manageable with 1 or 2 attendees, but a nightmare with more. Also, trying to find out who has been invited to a meeting is terrible. However, with all Microsoft 365 applications, Excel, Word, Outlook, etc., I learned a little trick. If you want to do something and cannot find where in the ribbon the function is, press Alt plus Q, and this will take you to a search box. Type in keywords of what you want to do, e.g. hide, and options will show up in the list, and you can choose the option you want. For example, hide columns. As for Stephen's comments about looking at the screen while working, to tell you the truth, I did not really think about this until he mentioned it. On all my Apple products, I set the screen curtain to be on, really to save the battery, but I still look at the screen, or where I think the screen should be. Is this muscle memory? Or maybe, personally speaking, my dad used to make sure I was looking at the person I was talking to. Never mind, I was trying to get the person in my sweet spot when I had one, to try and determine what they looked like. Which brings me to my final comment. The other day, I was out with Mrs. Mike, and someone working in a retail store tried to communicate non-verbally with me, even though I had my cane out and in the forefront. And then they proceeded to make a derogatory comment. Mrs. Mike off the top rope. However, the comment we received was that they were sorry, but I did not look blind. I had no snappy comebacks, as I was desperately trying to figure out what that comment meant. Any idea what this means, as I'm getting this more and more lately? And yes, like Shaun, RP has deteriorated my vision to the point that it is not usable. I don't know. Anyhow, time for a sip of eggnog. Happy Christmas from the man cave, Mike and Mrs. Mike. P.S. Even though we live in Ontario, Canada, South Central, we still have green grass.
Carl, congratulations.
Okay, this is the trouble when you come to them after a while. What does that mean?
I think it means everyone else is covered in snow at that point. Yeah.
Oh, right.
I appreciate that, Mark. I really appreciate the email to you and Mrs. Mark as well.
Mrs. Mike.
Sorry,
Thank you,
Mrs.
in the
Mike. I
man
beg your
cave.
pardon. Yes, Mrs. Mike.
Yes, thank you for all those comments. There's just too much to pick up on. Looking blind. It's funny you mention that because, yeah, I'm sure all of us have heard that before. And I almost guiltily, sometimes I'm almost, oh, that's good. Oh, why do I think that? You know, what do I think looking blind is? If I'm thinking, oh, well, is that almost a compliment, right? What my perception of someone who looks blind? It's it's a strange one, but something, we come across quite a lot.
I remember the first time and last time I went into a particular store, and they had a display of tinned beans.
That's all you need to say.
I know, exactly. You don't need to say any more than that, right? I know, exactly. You can just leave it there. Because honestly, you know what's coming next. You know what happens. And it was as hilarious as you can imagine. And do you know that way, there's that moment of, because everyone wants to ask you, or everyone, comes over and tries to help. And you want to help, right? But no one will let you do anything. It's just like, just go away.
If you move, you're going to destroy the entire store. Yeah, it is so true. But hey, it's just part of life. Everyone's done it.
You're going to get it, and you're going to get it a lot, because this is the unfortunate reality. I think it's because a lot of people who had full sight or had some vision, would try and have eye contact. And it's funny, when I mentioned this before, I remember the time I got slaughtered on social media by someone who was saying, oh, you're not blind if you're trying to make eye contact. And it's like, yeah, you've got no idea what you're talking about. Honestly, you don't understand this. We're all. I know people who are totally blind, who have no vision at all, who were taught, at a young age by their parents, you better try and make eye contact. You better eat a certain way. You better sit up when all the things, almost the sighted traits, if you like. In other words, and to make yourself suitable for society,
socially acceptable.
Yeah,
and it's an interesting conversation, though. I mean, it sort of refers back to blindisms as well. The certain traits that some of us have. Should they be almost frowned upon and not encouraged?
Like the rocking, for example, for some blind people.
The rocking,
rock
I knew someone who used to jog on the spot constantly. Maybe even clicking fingers or whatever it may be.
Pushing. I had a friend who used to push his fist into his eye. All the time.
Exactly.
To the point, he was probably going to make his eyesight even worse. It wasn't great to start with, but it was going to make it even worse.
But these things exist,
comforts,
right?
A lot of comforts.
Of course. And it's not a slight on the person who's doing them. It's perfectly natural to them. But because, it can make someone feel awkward, should it be, discouraged? Honestly, it's an interesting conversation. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I must admit, I've started to not make contact or even attempt to anymore. If someone's talking to me, hello as we're passing, I don't tend to even look in their direction. I don't know how I feel about that. It's because it doesn't make any difference, but I can't even attempt to make eye contact. But should I, just for a social norm? I suppose.
Well, that's the thing. And people who say, well, if you're trying to make eye contact, then you're not blind. because I've heard this as well, and it every time I hear it, it just irritates me because, again, it's a lack of understanding. And unfortunately, it comes more from blind people than it does anyone else. Who do just, frankly, I'm sorry, but people who are totally blind and have been blind from birth won't get it, right? Because you've never had vision, so you wouldn't understand that. That's the point. Whereas if you've come from vision, there are those societal norms that you try and do, and you naturally will do. And one of them is looking at the screen, right? Looking at the screen when there's nothing on it or the wrong thing on it. Your monitor in front of
yesterday.
You. It's just there for fun, right? I mean, there's no purpose to it, right?
Yeah, it's just habit. I mean,
so you can get that QR code for WhatsApp. That's all it is. That's the only reason. That's the only reason we have a monitor on our desks.
Yeah, but I'm staring at nothing. Not even the screen. I've got the Surface Pro at my feet with the cover on, and I'm still looking at the wall, thinking I'm going through icons, and it's all in my head. It's absolutely.
Exactly.
But out of politeness, if I'm having a conversation with someone, of course I will try and look in their direction. Then again, as soon as they move and they're like 6 foot down the road, I always think, oh, I shouldn't have bothered.
Yeah, I know. That's one of the benefits of actually, for those of you who are going through that transition point, right? I do find that's where the sunglasses are actually really useful, because if your eyes like mine are just darting from light, that's why I wear sunglasses all the time for two reasons. One, the light, we have lights for the studio, and I just can't, no way I could sit here with those lights blaring in my eyes and be comfortable. I'm very light sensitive. But the other reason is because I know my eyes dart from left to right all over the place. And it's only when I'm on a call with someone and someone has mentioned it in the past. I have friends who will be honest with me and tell me. And I say, look, just tell me the truth. Yeah. The eyes are bouncing from left to right. And it's like, I just don't like that. To me, that's just something that is not pleasant. For me, I'm not liking it. So if I'm not comfortable with that, I don't want to necessarily have someone see that. But the other benefit is that it actually helps me, because if I do that thing where I would have before, especially in my younger years, I was always really focusing hard. I mean, you've got something like nystagmus. Trying to keep focus on something is really difficult. Yeah, it's almost painful, because you're trying to hold your eyes still when they want to move. You can't do it, right? You just can't do that. So for me, it's not something I would be keen to do. So therefore, for that reason, I like wearing the sunglasses, because I can almost just forget about what my eyes are doing.
Hide your shame is what you're saying, Stephen Scott.
Yeah.
How dare you? Blind pride, brother and sisters.
No, I don't care.
Quickly, because I said no more 10-minute rambles.
Says
but I want to say, Outlook.
You're the one that's talked the longest in this
I know, I'm so
episode,
sorry.
Preece.
I lied. What can I say? Just quickly on Outlook. I agree with you. I don't think it's terrible or anything, but I've got this problem with mine recently, and I'm wondering if anyone else is having this. If I open up an email which is HTML, my screen reader grinds to a halt. For like Zoom invitations, any meeting invitations is where I'm noticing it. For trying to find the link to join this meeting, I've got to wait like 5 or 10 seconds. I hit tab, nothing is said. I wait, and then it'll read it. Just tabbing through the links is incredibly slow in Outlook. Anyone else having this problem? I have it in NVDA and JAWS, so I haven't tried it in Narrator. But let me know, or is there a setting that I'm doing something wrong I need to turn on or off, or I don't know.
So our good friend Robin Christopherson, Lord Robin, has been listening
Robin.
in, and I know he's got many comments on this, so we'll get him on soon, and we'll have a conversation about Outlook, because I think you are struggling a little bit. And I tried to teach you, but it's a complete waste of time, because you forget it the next day. You go, "Oh, this is great! It's so wonderful! It's amazing!" And the next day, forgotten. So it's complete.
Going through the emails is easy. It's fine. Control Y, choose my email account. Up and down, left, right, delete. Control R, whatever. Easy. Calendar, no idea, no chance. I can't figure it out at all.
Okay. Let's move on to a different topic. Oh, actually, before we go on to the next one, I want to mention just one more thing from Mike's email. It was Mike, right? It wasn't Mark. It was Mike. It's just, Mike. I'm trying to hear it on this thing, and I can't. It's not. I'm not hearing it. Mike. So it's right. Okay. So, Mike, you mentioned about Mr. F. I want to mention Mr. F a bit.
Mr. F.
God bless you, sir.
So he's the boss man. He's the guy who decides whether this show lives or dies. And I'll be honest, it's probably been on life support a few times, and I think he's been hovering near the plug.
Clear.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is, of course, when he's not whiskey soaked. Mr. F is the big boss man. He's the man who decides whether or not we are here or not. So, email Mr. F at mrf.com. That's not a real email address. Please,
Yes, please don't
not
say
email
that.
Actually, do you know what? It'd be kind of cool to see what happens if people did. But yes, that is who Mr. F is. He's terrifying. Utterly terrifying, especially when he wakes up.
He's a huge giant of a man with a booming voice and a big beard.
And a
our
bottle of
boss.
whiskey to match.
Yes.
Okay, so let's move on. Louise has been in touch.
Hi, Stephen, Shaun, and all double tappers. This is Louise from the UK. I've been listening for a long time, but it's one of the first times that I've actually got in contact.
Oh, cool.
I wanted to contact you to make everybody aware of something that I found out recently about Meta, which has made me really wary about jumping on board with the Meta glasses or any other hardware that they release. So, a little bit of a story, really, but a couple of years ago, I got a device from Meta called the Meta Portal TV, and they had two devices. There was the Meta Portal and the Portal TV, and basically what they are is devices that you could do WhatsApp calls, you could do Facebook video calls. They had Amazon Echo support, as well as their own Hey Portal support for voice commands. And the biggest feature that was really good that I thought was the ability to have talkback as default on there just by going into the settings. So they're obviously built on an Android operating system. So I got the TV version, which was quite small, but a little camera that you would put on top of your TV. And I got that so that I could do video calls with my family, with my little boy, when he was sort of 1 year old, so that I could speak with family and not have to try and hold a device while trying to play with him. And the camera would follow where we were so they could see what we were doing and interact with us. And it has been brilliant. A really, really good device. Unfortunately, there was an announcement a little while ago, which I hadn't really noticed what implication this would have. And it was that the device, Meta has said, is sort of end of life. And they were going to be removing support for Hey Portal and Amazon Echo support. So the downside to that would be no voice commands. It also said a number of apps that were on the device would no longer work. So things like Netflix that you could use it for. There was all kinds of different apps, Spotify, and some of them are accessible, some of them weren't. But the good thing with the device, as I say, was all the menus were accessible. What I hadn't anticipated, which I noticed today when I went to try and use the device, and it made sounds, but there was no voice, was that TalkBack is obviously also classed as an app. So therefore, with the decision that Meta has just made, apparently with no thought whatsoever for people that might have accessibility needs, is that the device no longer speaks. There's no way to access any of the menus. There'll be no voice commands. So basically, the device is just going to become a glorified doorstop for me because I'm not able to use it anymore, which is really, really disappointing. And I suppose my concern is if they can do this with a device, okay, not many of us may be using it, but if they can just do this without any thought for the implications, what will happen when suddenly a new version of the glasses come out or more up-to-date hardware? Are they going to just do exactly the same thing and just suddenly say, right, we're moving apps from the previous version that a lot of blind people have, and suddenly there's no Be My Eyes support, or there's no voice command, or things like that? I just really wanted to draw it to people's attention, just to make people aware of this situation. And also, I suppose, to ask a question, if anybody has any other suggestions at how I can do what I was doing with the portal. As I say, the advantage of it was I could be hands-free calling. My family could hear me and my son, and vice versa. We didn't have to hold anything, or we didn't have any devices that he could knock over, and things like that. So any suggestions that people have will be really appreciated.
Wow. Thank you, Louise. First off, thank you for getting in touch and sharing your story and getting in touch for the first time. That was nice.
Yes, thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Can I just jump in here firstly, because I know you've actually had these devices.
Yeah.
I think this is absolutely appalling. If this is true across the board, I've got no reason to doubt what Louise is saying, but I haven't looked into this. This is appalling. This is the equivalent of saying we're turning off this device's screen for us. We can't use it anymore. You've bricked this device. Isn't this terrible?
Or the flip
Am I
side.
overreacting?
Well, no, hang on. The flip side is it's arguably now a dead device. Now, that's part of the problem here, right? We're kind of in this new era. When we were doing CES coverage, we would often talk about, and this was a word I only heard at CES, which was vaporware, which is ultimately where something comes along as a great idea and just disappears off into the mist. It never really becomes anything. It's a prototype
but that doesn't
and disappears
appear.
off. No, but that's my point, right? So there's a different word needed here to explain this, but it's kind of becoming that way with a lot of tech. You know, when something's dead and buried and useless, that's it. As far as the company's concerned, the whole thing is done. Now, that's difficult, right? Because people have spent money on this thing. You've bought the thing, it's working for you, and, you know, maybe the tool that, you know, or the function it had was good enough, but now it's, you know, completely useless. Because of taking off the talkback angle of it. So, you know, for that reason, it's now completely useless, obviously, to Louise.
Yes.
But, you know, to anybody, okay, I guess you could probably still use the portal functionality. But as far as Meta are concerned, this product's dead and buried. So, you know, as far as they're concerned, they haven't come out and said just throw it straight in the trash, but they may as well have done.
Look, if they want to turn off...
That's the question. Was that the fair bit? Because that's really what this is about. Is it fair?
No.
Is it fair that product is now dead... And you know, people have paid their money and nothing is useful, or should they have at least, you know, allowed it to continue and be functional as it was? I don't know, because then the experience is going to degrade over time, right? Anyway.
Well, even if they say look, this is something that not enough people's using, we're turning off this service, you won't be able to make video calls or whatever. For a start, WhatsApp is still running. There's absolutely no reason you couldn't make video calls with WhatsApp, even if they don't have their own portal service or however they did it. I don't even know. But the second...
It was running Android.
Yeah, of course.
It's like an Android tablet, really. That's what it was.
It's a customized version that Meta produced. Now, they may be saying, this kind of goes back to how we started the show, we don't want to we don't want to put resources in to maintain this software, to keep this running, because not enough people's using it, end of life. I get that. But why take away that ability right now? Just leave it as it is. And maybe after a while, it will stop working anyway. But why make the decision to actually stop talk over?
But what's the difference? I intrinsically I agree with you, but I also try and look at it from the other side. What's the difference between it just stopping working by itself, by the nature of, you know, degradation of the software over time, which will create a worse experience, and just pulling the app altogether and just pulling up the talkback completely?
Because people may still be getting some use out of this right now. Louise bought this. This isn't something that was given and then, you know, a free bit of hardware and you're paying a subscription for the service. This hardware was bought. How much did you pay for yours? I can't remember now, but I know
it was $200 for mine. I bought. There was two of them I remember buying. I bought one which was like a stand with a screen, almost like a tablet, and you could just have it on your desk. And it, you know, was a communication device. Then there was another one with a portal TV. That just I thought that would have caught on, but it didn't. It just didn't catch on for whatever reason. I don't know what
video
it was.
calls don't really catch on, I don't think, other than on the smartphone. And even then, I'm not convinced that, excuse me, that video calls are, you know, everything that everybody wants. I suppose we should say, I'm sure we're coming to the end of the show, but before we go, that what's an alternative to the portal to make video calls? The only thing I can think of is an Apple TV with an iPhone, if you're in that ecosystem. You can use the iPhone to make FaceTime calls, but of course the other person you're talking to would have to also have an Apple device.
Well, what about the Echo? What about the Echo Show, or what about the Google Nest Hub? Those both have video calling capabilities within them, don't they? To contact.
You know what? You're absolutely right. You can do video drop-ins on each other or video calls. You could use an Echo Show. The only thing is, I don't think it has that ability to follow you around the room, you know, like center stage or whatever equivalent there is. So it is a fixed frame. I think it's something I haven't used. But no, you're absolutely right. And that may be the more mainstream or universal way to go and doesn't lock you into the Apple universe. Locks you into the Echo universe, but it's a far cheaper universe to be in.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, right? Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because you want those hand-free solutions. Portal had a lot of promise, actually. But I think the problem was, for the mainstream, I think it was just too much of a one-trick pony. It didn't really do much more. I know it had other functions, and it was growing into other things, and Zoom was a thing, of course. But then a lot of people just realize, look, I can just use my phone for this, or I can use my computer for this that I already have. They already had the device. It was a solution that came along a bit too late in the day. You know, it always makes me think back to those days of the Cisco WebEx systems that would be put in place. They were gigantic. Cisco, I think it had the big TVs on the wall and the huge cameras in the conference rooms that you still get today. A lot of big conference rooms and businesses will have that. But it was like having that in your home. It was like the dedicated talking machine, you know, and it just felt a bit odd, you know, that was coming out. But, you know, look, it's clearly going away and clearly dying. It's such a shame, though, and this is the problem for me. You've paid your money for a product, and suddenly that product is completely useless to you because the service is gone, and there's no recourse for that. It's a case of, well, you paid your money for it, you had your fun, that's it. Is that right? I mean, in a world where we're trying to not get rid of stuff, and you know, suddenly all that ends up in landfill, you know, you think, it's not
feels
great.
Wrong to me. That definitely feels wrong.
But then you pay your money, you take your chance, right? Interesting one. Anyway, thoughts are welcome. You can get in touch in all the usual ways. You know how to do it. We will, of course, be back tomorrow with plenty more. Stay tuned, of course, for even more Double Taps coming up here on AMI Audio, on podcast, and on YouTube. And we will catch you tomorrow. We'll get into the inbox and do some more tomorrow. Thank you, Shaun.
Thank you. Bye-bye.